Good morning, Ms. Silo. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Chair.
Thank you. Are you ready?
Yes, we are ready, Chair, except we will be referring to some documents that are in your files, and I don't know if the Chair would like to reach out to a file when the time comes. And if that is the case, I think the files are rather far from the Chair. I don't know if we can address
Well,
that.
that's what I was talking to her about.
Yes, Chair.
Well, how much will we be using them before tea break?
If I may just... We just might make it to tea break, Chair.
Okay, no, I think she has managed.
She's managed to.
Yes,
Okay.
okay.
Then we'll sort them out properly during tea.
Yeah.
Thank,
Okay.
thank you, Chair. Chair, before we proceed, may I remind the Chair that 2 weeks ago we presented reports of investigations undertaken in respect of certain transactions within Transnet. Today we are engaging MNS as one of the investigators on specifically the investigations they conducted and the reports that they have filed, which now form part of the record before the Chair. In going through these issues, Chair, we do not want to present the witness, and I use that term guidedly, as a factual witness. The witness is speaking to what their mandate is, what they did, and what is the outcome of the process. And he will cross-refer us to the various reports. With that understanding then, an interesting question has arisen, and we would seek the Chair's guidance in this regard, whether it's necessary to swear in this particular witness.
Yeah, it will be necessary.
We shall proceed to do so.
He's still a witness.
We shall proceed to do so, Chair, if the witness may be sworn in.
Yeah, thank you.
Please state your full names for the record.
Isiamo Michael Sidumedi.
Do you have any objections to taking the prescribed oath?
No?
Do you consider the oath to be binding on your conscience?
Yes, it does.
Do you solemnly swear that all the evidence that you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
I'm sorry. Let me just get the full names. I didn't get them properly.
Name is Tsiamo.
Sorry?
Tsiamo. T-S-H.
T-H.
No. S.
S.
No.
Yes.
T-S-H.
H.
I.
Yes.
A-M-O. Tsiamo.
Oh, and you pronounce it Tsiamo.
Tsiamo, correct.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
And the surname is Sidumedi.
And that's S-E-N. D-I.
D-U. M-E.
Yes.
D-I.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, before you should have a set of slides in a folder with a black backing. I shall not call the folder black,
You
Chair.
won't call it black.
No, Chair, I won't.
Yeah.
We have taken the liberty of marking that set of slides Exhibit BB8A.
Yes.
And for the record, Chair, we will be presenting 4 witnesses in regard to the MNS investigations. Mr. Sidumedi's presentation is marked BB8A, and the next witness will be marked BB8B. But MNS will retain the title BB8.
Yes, this file marked the procurement of 95,100 and 1064 locomotives by Transnet will be marked as Exhibit BB 8A. I think when you have got 8 so close to the second B,
It looks like a B.
it's like it's not double B 8A. It looks like triple B. So I think maybe you can create more space.
We
between the
shall,
last
Chair.
Yes.
We'll uplift your copy and introduce a space between the last B and the 8
Yeah.
to distinguish the 8 from the B.
Thank you.
You should as well, Chair, have another folder in red called the Index Transnet Reference Bundle.
Yes.
The Chair will recall that when we submitted the reports, we gave a general bundle. We have updated that bundle for, insofar as MNS is concerned, for ease of reference. And the first 6 pages, the Chair has already seen they are part of the original bundles. What we have done from page 7 is to unpack the index even further, indicating the specific pages where specific exhibits appear. That detail was not set out in the original index. The index just told one where to find exhibits, so they would run, let's say, over 1,000 pages. So we have tried to be more specific and broken it down further from page, after the first index for the next 5 pages.
Well, in this index, you have got a report at the top on the left-hand corner. Excuse me. And you have got file volume
Yes, Chair.
on the right-hand corner of that index.
Yes, Chair.
Now you have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
There are 19 items.
up to 19.
Yes.
Do those numbers 1 to 19 reflect the numbers you have given to 19 reports? Otherwise, the report 1, report 2, report 3, up to 19.
Yes, the numbering on the left indicates there are 19 in all.
Yes,
Just a numbering.
but also when one goes to them, will one find 1, 2, 3? Are they marked like that?
Not like that, Chair. What we then use the column on the right, which is called file volume. And that tells you which report, as listed, is in which volume. So in this instance, the first 4 reports are to be found in volume 1.
So the numbering on the left then is just for the various items on
Just
the
for the
index,
various items,
not
yes.
about the reports.
Yes,
Okay.
where the reports are to be found.
So the items are the reports. The items relate to the reports.
Indeed, Chair.
And then on the column on the extreme right, you indicate, you say file volume.
Yes, Chair. If the Chair would just glance at the files, they are all marked volume 1 of 17 or volume 7 of 17.
Yes. So those numbers under file volume tell you in which volume you will find a particular report.
Indeed, Chair.
And okay, the file part might just confuse her.
So the Chair
file
suggests we
parts.
delete the word file and just have volume.
Just have volume.
We could do that, Chair.
Then then one knows exactly.
Yes, Chair.
Yeah, so when you go to the actual liver arch files, you look for volume.
Volume 1, Volume
volume
5,
2,
as the case may
volume
be.
3. Yes, okay.
We will do so, Chair.
Yeah, so let's delete file. And and the item, the report under item 6,
Yes, Chair.
you have got 2A, 4, 5, 6, and 7, 2B, 8, 9, and 10.
Yes, Chair.
Those are still volumes. If you go physically to the report, you will find written 2A.
Yes,
And-
as regards transaction item 6,
Yeah,
it resulted in 2 separate reports.
yeah.
The heading is the same, except the one report is titled 2A, the other is titled 2B. So when we
Okay.
get to 6, we say insofar as 2A is concerned, that shall be found at volumes 4, 5, 6, and 7. 2B is at 8, 9, and 10.
2A and 2B refer to sections of the same report.
Of the same report, except that they are, MNS filed them separately. They address different issues, but all the issues emanate from the same transaction.
Yes.
Yes.
So 2A is to be found in volumes 4, 5, 6, and 7.
And 7, Chair,
Those are the numbers you will find when you go physically to the
to the volumes.
report, to the
Yeah.
liver arch files.
To the liver arch files.
Okay. Then I think that 2A should not be there. I think it should be on the item side, and 2B, because it may cause confusion. You see, the principle is, as you have confirmed to me, what comes under that column, under volume, tells the reader what the volume number is for that particular report.
Indeed, Chair.
And the report that it relates to is the one mentioned in the middle column of the index.
Yes, Chair.
So I think the 2A and 2B parts should be on this side, so that, because otherwise, I think if it's like this, I think when I go to the liver arch file, I must look for 2A, and I won't find 2A or 2B.
Yes, Chair.
Am I right?
No, you are correct. The Chair will find on the spine 2A or 2B.
It is marked 2A.
It is marked.
Okay.
If I may say, originally the index read, as regards that report
Yeah.
into 1064,
Yeah.
volumes 4 to 10.
Yes.
But there was no way of indicating which report specifically is in which volumes. And that's
Yes.
when we came up with the idea that we should put 2A underlined to indicate that insofar as 2A is concerned, that's to be found at 4, 5, 6, 7. And 2B of the 1067 transaction is to be found at 8, 9, and 10. That was the purpose of
Well,
marking
if-
it that way. But if there is a better way of doing it, Chair, we are happy to change.
Well, if I will find 2A on
On the spine.
on the file, on the liver arch file,
Yes,
that's
Chair, you
fine.
will.
yeah,
Chair, you will.
then that's fine. So there will be one written 2A, and then 4, 5, 6, and 7.
Yes, Chair, if I may just
Yeah.
glance at my... Yes, Chair. I have volume 4 with the name, then it says volume 2A, then volume 5 again says 2A, 6 and 7, and then when it gets to volume 8, it says 2B, which is 8,
That-
9, 10. They will
That
read 2B.
that's fine. So I think if we are going to retain 2A where it is in the index, and they are under 2A for liver arch files.
Correct, Chair?
Each one of, they should all reflect that 2A4, 2A5, 2A6, 2A7.
They do currently.
Because then, if I look at the index, I go and look for 2A5, I must find 2A5 written. If I find 5 only,
No.
I'll think it's not the one.
No, it will be,
Yeah.
it will give you the name of the
Yeah.
report 2A,
Yeah.
volume 5.
Okay, that's fine. Same with 2B.
Same with 2B.
Okay, no, that's fine. Okay, no, I think the rest appear to be, there is 12, 3, 12 and 13. What's the story there?
It's 2 volumes. It's the relocation of 2 OEMs to Durban. It is in 2
so
volumes.
It's
volumes 12
and
and 13.
Okay, that's
Yes,
fine.
Chair.
That's fine. Thank you.
Then, if I may go over lift, the chair will recall this index. Chair will recall that when we submitted the reports, we indicated that we had printed only the reports in hard copy. The annexures to the reports were in soft copies. In order to assist with navigation, we indicated in that index on which pages the actual report runs and which pages the annexures run. That is the purpose of the second index. 4 pages forward,
Okay, I'm sorry. You are talking about page 3.
I was talking about page 3.
So, does that take care of each of the reports?
Each of the reports. So for
And that's page 3 and page 4
page 4, page 5, Chair.
and page 5.
Yes.
So,
So if we
what-
take,
Okay, so I think where the middle column where it says file volume,
It
we
will just
delete
be volume.
file as,
Yes, Chair.
again for consistency. So that tells me which volume deals with which report.
Yes, Chair.
If I look at the first column and the second.
the second, yes, the first and the second,
Yes.
as we did in the first index.
Yes, and
Except
then,
this index is broader. It then
Yes.
introduces a column report pages,
yeah,
and it
yes,
tells you the report is to be found
exhibit.
those. And lastly, it indicates over what pages the exhibits run.
Yes,
So we would have, let's say, on item 4, they run from page 174 to page 4,222. That's
that
just
is,
exhibits.
those are the annexures.
Those are the annexures to the report.
Yes, to the report.
Yes, Chair.
Okay, and item 5, they run from 4,307 to 5,274.
Indeed, Chair.
But those are page numbers as opposed to the number of actual annexures, is that right?
No, it's page numbering.
Yeah, it's page numbers,
Yes.
yeah. Okay, and if you go to item 6, they
There's
start
that
from...
2A, 2B split.
Yeah, and under A, you have got 5,333 to 6,825. Yeah, I think this is a good way to make sure it's easy to locate any particular annexure.
Now, if I may add then to your exhibit file, no,
Or well,
your index file.
maybe it doesn't help me with how to locate any particular annexure.
Now
it
that's-
just tells me
We are
where I will
updating,
find all the annexures for that report.
we are updating your index
Yes.
file now.
Yes,
Your registrar is about to hand you a document,
yes.
which should go at the back,
Yes.
which seeks to address precisely that point.
Yes.
So on what, on MNS reports,
Oh, she has decided to take.
you have been dispossessed, Chair, yes.
Yeah. She has decided to take everything from me.
No, wait.
She promises me what she's giving me is better than what I had before.
We'll accept that.
Okay, yes.
So then, after the landscape index, we have just introduced a few more pages.
I'm not sure from where she must have, the new document must be the one coming after page 5.
After page 5, Chair.
Yeah.
We will insert a proper a description page for that.
Yes.
Now, that document she just inserted seeks to address the very point that the Chair has raised, which is, where do I go if I'm looking for Exhibit 22 of this particular report?
Yes.
And we identify the exhibit number, and we provide in the last column the exact pages where that exhibit is to be found in that report.
Yes. So you have got a column under the heading reports,
Yes, Chair.
and you have got A, B, C, D, E, F, and F.
Let me, if I may address myself first to the numbering 456 report.
Mhm.
That 456 corresponds with item number in the main index. Your index will show you item number 4 is that acquisition of 1064 locomotives.
Yes, but then you shouldn't have the word report above for there, should you? You see, in the previous
item.
pages, a report is above the items as
Yes.
opposed to the numbers on the extreme left.
We'll change that to item.
Yes, item, yes.
Yes, Chair.
Okay.
So then, we are dealing with item 4,
Yes.
and
The next column tells us the description of the report.
the description of the report,
And then you have a column for file.
file would be volume.
File will be volume.
Yes, Chair.
Okay.
So on that, it tells us if you go to volume 1, we find the report itself from pages 57 to page 173.
Where we say volume, we effectively mean the report volume. Is that right?
Chair, if I may.
In other,
It means volume, Chair.
It's not the volume of anything.
No, it's our volumes.
It's a report volume. In
No,
other
no,
words,
no.
it tells me what a report that is and what lever arch file will
Lever arch
find
file.
in.
Yes.
Or maybe we should be saying lever arch file instead of report. I'm not sure.
It's
what-
because we have marked the lever arch files volume 1, volume 2, up to 17.
Yes.
So when we say volume, we say go to our volume 1.
Yes.
And at pages 57 to 173, that is where the report will be located.
Yes.
That's what we're trying to communicate, and we're not sure if it really is coming through.
Yes. No, you remember I was the one that said this file report is confusing.
Yes, sure.
And we agreed, let's delete file
We
and
delete
say
file.
report. It's one report may have a number of files, lever arch files.
Indeed, Chair.
And when we say report 1, we actually mean the lever arch file.
No, when we say report, we say the report filed by MNS.
No. I mean, when we, you see, under, let's go back to page 1.
Yes, Chair.
You see where it was saying file volume, not report actually.
Yes,
File volume.
volume,
We deleted file.
and retain the word
It says
volume.
now volume 1.
Yes,
volume-
Chair.
Yeah.
Yes.
So those numbers, I earlier on said that refers to a report. I think I said that, but when I think it through, it seems to actually refer to a lever arch file.
A lever arch file.
So it's lever arch file 1.
Indeed, Chair.
Is that right?
Indeed.
That's what we should be having.
The extreme right column, indeed,
The
Chair.
extreme right column.
Yes, Chair.
Maybe not volume. Or do you think we should retain volume?
We would prefer to retain volume,
Yeah.
as long as we understand that the volumes refer to the commission's volumes. The Commission has submitted to you, as far as reports are concerned, 17 volumes.
Yeah, yes.
And each is marked accordingly, volume 1, volume 2, up to 17.
And we must understand the volume to mean the
arch
same
liver
thing
file.
as the liver arch file.
Absolutely, sir.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
okay, hopefully it won't be confusing to somebody
Should-
who
should-
might
should-
have to go through who is not here.
We hope not, because even when they're uploaded, they will be uploaded under volumes. It will
Yes,
be Transnet, we call it a reference bundle,
yeah,
volume 1,
Yeah.
volume 2.
yeah. Okay, let's stick to volume.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Yes,
Then going to the latest edition, which is the last pages inserted.
1 second. Yes, okay.
Then, as I indicated in response to the Chair's query about if the Chair wants to see Exhibit 20 of the report, the 1064 report, how do you go about it?
Okay, on what page are we?
It's the
The first page of the new document?
first page of the new document.
Yes,
We said the first column is the item number which
Yes.
cross-references to the main index.
yes,
Then the report itself is identified.
yes,
And volume 1, the report itself appears at pages 57 to 173.
yes. You might wish, you see, you have got in that document a report description.
Yes, Chair.
You might wish to do exactly the same on the first document, you know,
We will add that.
because those items actually give a description of the report.
Yes, Chair.
Yeah. Okay.
The
And
Chair then inquired, what is Part A, Part B, Part C?
let's finish first. So where we had file, we said we'll delete that and write volume,
Volume, Chair.
and that's fine. And then after that column, you have got report, and then part, exhibit, blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
And then you have got in the next column 57 to 173. What
Yes,
is
Chair.
that?
It says, report 57 under the heading pages, 57 from page 57 to page 173. The Chair will recall, we are still in volume 1, and there are other reports that precede this particular one in volume 1.
There's a report 57.
No, it's pages 57 to 173.
So this is pages 57 to 173.
173.
Pages of the
Of the
the
volume.
report.
Of the volume. The page numbering at the extreme is our volume numbering.
Well, you have got a report there, and before report you have got a volume.
Yes, Chair.
That report refers to what? We've got a report description on the second column. So that report is which report?
If I may just inquire with Yes, Chair.
Mm-hmm.
Keeping our finger there, Chair, and we go back to the main index. We look for item 4.
Yes,
Item 4 reads acquisition of 1064,
yes,
dated 7 December, and it tells us it's in volume 1.
yes,
When we go then to this index, that is the report, item 4.
Yes,
The next one is item 5, which is the next one,
yes,
1064. And it starts off with the report at volume 1 and the pages from 4223 to 4306.
let's talk about 4.
Yes, Chair. And perhaps,
I see nothing about 4 there. 4 and 5 are different, isn't it? They are different items.
if I go, Chair, to you just have the report at item 4 without the annexures.
Yeah, so why do we have it there if I thought that this one, this page and the pages that come after it are there to give us more details about where to locate.
To avoid
annexures.
confusion, we can remove that because it's a direct duplication of item 4 in the main index.
Yes, okay,
We are happy then to delete 4 on this
Okay.
page, and then it will
Yes.
start with 5.
yes, okay.
And item 5 is the procurement of
And
transport.
is the position that item 4, that is, that report described in item 4, has no annexures?
It's got no one, doesn't have any annexures in your current volumes, Chair.
Yes.
Yes, Chair.
Okay, all right. So, okay, then we go to 5.
We go
Then
to 5.
we use the heading which you already have at the top.
Yes, Chair.
Then, in terms of that, we have got volume under that column. There's 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and 1 and 2, 2 and 3 and 3. So those are the volume. Those are the liver arch files relating to this particular report.
Indeed, Chair.
And then you then have a report written on the next column.
Yes, Chair.
What is that?
That is the actual report from 4223 to 4306. And thereunder we list its various exhibits.
But why do we need the word report there? Is it not causing confusion? Because so far, in terms of the first document, that index,
Yes, Chair.
as I see the principle, it is, if you go to the index, you must know the description of the report you are looking for.
Indeed, Chair.
Okay, there's an index that gives you the description of the report. Once you know the description of the report you are looking for, the index has a column which tells you in which liver arch file or liver arch files you will find that report.
Yes, Chair.
Okay? We have called that volume so and so. We haven't called them liver arch file, whatever. So now you know where to find a particular report. It may be in one liver arch file, it may be in a number of liver arch files.
Yes, Chair.
Okay? Then now you want to find annexures relating to the report. So the next thing you should know is in which pages of the volumes that you have been told about you will find particular annexures. So it seems to me if when I'm now looking, I know which report I'm looking for, and I know which liver arch files relate to that report. When I'm looking for where to find the annexures, you tell me about a report, you are confusing me.
Okay, Chair, maybe if I
I know the report already. I know the liver arch files. All I want now is
the annexures.
where are the annexures in the liver arch files?
We can do so. I just need to bring to the Chair's attention the following. This latest index we've just given you, that indicates specifically where each annexure is to be found, does not relate to all not to all the 17 volumes. This is MNS specific.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yes, and it
Yes.
was intended to be able to exist separate from the main index. Once you have
Yes.
this, you can find your way through the entire MNS report system.
Yes.
Yes, Chair.
But what it can do, if it's separate, is just to say this is about the M&S report, you know.
Then we will
And-
take out,
And then you say M&S reports are in volumes 1 to whatever. And then you say annexures, blah, 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 the page numbers.
we will give it another shot, Chair. We will
Yes.
take out the report. The last thing we want is to create confusion.
confusion, yeah.
It is intended to assist to
Yes,
avoid
yes.
confusion and
Yes.
facilitate reference.
Yes.
So we will
but
we
if-
will remove reference to report each time. Just identify the report and start with Exhibit 1.
Yes. You have got part what. That's what's written in the files.
Yes, we do so because MNS has grouped its exhibits in terms of Part A, Part B, Part C to F.
Yes.
That's how they've done it.
Yes.
And that's why the Chair will see in Part A, it runs from 4307 to 4323.
Yes.
So that is at a high level.
Mm.
Then at a granular level, it's the next list, which then gives you Exhibit 1 is at 5335 and so forth. Yes, the Part A, Part B is the way the report itself is structured.
Yes.
And we were trying to link the manner in which they have structured their report with our index.
Yes.
But once again, if it doesn't assist, it's not an important feature. We can do away with it.
We have used exhibit so and so, exhibit that. That's how the transcript reads,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yes, Chair.
I don't think it has Part A, Part B, and so on, probably because we didn't have need to talk about parts.
We didn't.
I think that maybe what one needs in regard to the parts is to indicate, okay, so that indicates where those parts are to be found.
Yes. Parts as identified in the report itself.
And
And each part has its own exhibits.
and under volume 1, you have got parts A up to C.
Yes,
Is that right?
that's correct, Chair.
And then D falls under both volumes 1 and 2.
Correct, Chair.
Okay, so maybe we can leave that as it is. And then in the or alongside 4, you have got report there as well.
Yeah, and we have said that we are going to delete that going
You can
forward.
delete that.
Yes, Chair.
And then after that, we just have exhibit 1, exhibit whatever, which is what we have been dealing with. So that's easy.
Yes, Chair.
But now you have got numbers on the right-hand side of exhibit. So those are exhibit numbers.
No, on the right-hand side.
Before the pages, page
Yes.
numbers.
It reads Exhibit 1, Exhibit 2. And
Yes.
they are all in volume 4, at least 4.
Yes,
They are all in
yes.
volume 4, so
Yeah.
it's Exhibits 1 to 22.
Yeah, you see at the top, I think, if you go to where we deleted the word report
Yes, Chair.
first, in the dark, on the dark part just above that,
Yes, Chair.
you have got volume 1 written there. Can you see it before dated October?
I'm at item 6, Chair.
No, I'm at
Item 5.
page 1 of the new document
Yes,
in the
Chair.
index, at the top.
Yes, Chair.
You see where we deleted report?
I see that, Chair.
We
substituted
before
that with
Part A,
item.
Part B.
Yes, Chair.
And then there's the dark part, locomotives, volume 1.
Yes, Chair.
Can you see volume 1?
I see that, Chair.
Now, it creates the impression, at least to my eye, that what falls under that is volume whatever, which would be confusing because we've got volume on the other side. But that's part of the description of the item.
Yes,
So maybe what we should do, I think what I will do on mine, when you go to, the second report that we deleted?
that we deleted.
Yeah,
Yes, Chair.
yeah, and then you have got Exhibit 1, Exhibit 2.
Indeed.
I think I'm going to write on top of Exhibit 1, I'm going to write exhibit number.
Okay.
So
You can do
I don't link those numbers with volume 1 at the top, because otherwise I think
You get confused.
it's volume 1, volume 2, so it's exhibit number. Okay, that seems to be clear for me now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then it just follows the
Actually, if you go to page 2
Yes,
of
Chair.
the new document, exactly on that column under which I've written exhibit number, you have got number.
Yes, Chair.
Yes.
Then we put exhibit number.
Yeah, you have got number, but we didn't have number on this side. You see, there was no
I see.
consistency.
I see.
So, okay, I think I follow the rest. I think it's just these references to a report that would be confusing. I'm just deleting them if it's fine with you.
It's fine, Chair.
On page 4.
And as we work through the documents, if there's still a way of improving the index, we are happy to.
Yes. Yes, no. I think I understand it much better now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So then we will be working off Exhibit BB8A, and to the extent necessary, then we shall make reference to I in the index. Thanks. Mr. Sidumedi, are you ready?
Have his documents been, are they the same as ours? Will we have the same understanding?
As Mr. Sidumedi,
Yes, or are we going to speak to different pages?
where different pages is not an option, Chair. I would like to believe that we'd be talking to the same pages.
Do you want a short adjournment to make sure that we have the same everything?
He just
Or-
gave a slight nod, I think, for his comfort, Chair.
Yeah.
Perhaps I would be happy to do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's take a 5-minute adjournment then. We'll resume at 10 to 11.
Thank you, Chair.
We adjourn.
All right, we are still yet to hear from Mr.
which the board was not quite comfortable with, and that investigation related to the 1064 investigation as well. So when the new board came in June 2018, we then had to present our preliminary findings at that particular time, mainly relating to 100 locomotives. The board was quite satisfied with what was presented, and because obviously by that time we had not as yet finished the full scope of our mandate. So our instruction was then to proceed with the outstanding investigations, but at the same time, implement some of the findings that were already coming out of our preliminary report. So that's what happened in June last year. And that spoke now to the actual mandate, which was first crafted by the previous board. In the main, it's just a summarization of a 5-page document that was actually given to us as part of our mandate. In essence, was to establish whether the 1064 transaction, in terms of the ETC, was there any inflating of prices after hedging? Whether in the procurement of 1064 and 100 locomotives, were there any governance processes that were followed? And were such processes effective? Was there any relationship between Tequesta and CSR? We'll be talking about that, I think, to us after lunch. And provide some recommendations as to, in view of your findings, what recommendations is MNS providing to the board, and what steps can Transnet take against anyone who was found to be wanting in the manner in which they conducted themselves in the transaction. And as well, recommend to the board if there are any remedial steps within Transnet itself that they can embark upon to prevent the reoccurrence of such activities. So that was what our mandate entailed in a nutshell, Chair.
Thank you.
Is there a document on which it is reflected, the mandate?
Chair?
Is there a document here which
There is not
reflects
a
the mandate?
document in the reports themselves or in their exhibits that reflects the mandate.
Okay.
What Mr. Sidumedi has given us is a summary of what appears from their mandate letter.
Okay.
And I'm sure same can be made available should the chair require.
Correct, that would be done.
Thank you. Now, you say that was the mandate that you were given. Now, could you briefly take us through the methodology that you employed in the course of investigations and what processes you followed?
Correct. Obviously, as a first step, one will have to collate a lot of documents between the transaction. And by and large, we relied on the...
Well, maybe you might just tell us about the team that was involved, because I'm sure it wasn't just you alone. The team that was involved. How was it made up? What were their qualifications for this kind of task? And then proceed from there.
Thank you, Chair.
Certainly, Chair, like the Chair's colleague said, we can't assign such a task only to a law firm, because we had to set up a multidisciplinary team of professionals. I'll first start within the law firm itself. Obviously, like I said, when I spoke about the various disciplines, we had to put up lawyers focusing on procurement, corporate and commercial law, and construction law in the main. Then, to an extent that obviously some of the issues that you are dealing with here speak of financial issues, we then got an actuary who will assist us to analyze some of the documents and insofar as they relate to financial issues. We also had a forensic team that obviously would then be looking at how to collect data, how to image. We'll see on the methodology we speak about the imaging of computers and servers. That's what we got. And as well, because the nature of instruction involved technical issues of engineering as well, we had Akaskip, who we roped in to look into the rail engineering aspects of the project. So that was a multidisciplinary team that we had composed to ensure that at least all the issues that fall within our mandate are able to be addressed effectively.
So what was the number of the members of the team? Is it 5 or 6, or it differed according to the different stages of the investigation?
I must confess, Chair, 95%, if not 99% of the entire MNS lawyers were involved.
Yes.
I think only one or two people wouldn't have been involved in this transaction. The MNS has 22 lawyers.
Yes.
So the bulk of those lawyers were dedicated to this project.
Yes.
Obviously, as well, the forensic entity as well, they had their own
Yeah.
employees. So we are talking about close to 40
Close to
personnel who were
40.
involved in various aspects, obviously,
Yes.
of the mandate that we're executing.
Okay, no, that's fine. But the disciplines that you have mentioned were the disciplines that were represented in the team.
Correct, which is why, in actual fact, that when you look at our volumes, different chapters were written by different people focusing on those particular expertise, which is why, even in terms of our testimony, we'll be assigning different experts, that is to focus on various aspects of the report.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that background, Mr. Sudumedi. You were then going to explain to the Chair exactly the methodology that you employed and to inform him of the various processes that you followed.
Correct. So, like I said, obviously the first port of call will be to get documents that inform us. Before that time, we had not had any knowledge about the project, so we had to collate documents. By and large, the documents were sourced from Transnet. We had to identify the persons that were involved who could be able to give us the documents that we require. Transnet at a stage assigned the lady called Ms. Lindy Mdleche. She was our interface in terms of collating data. So we had to trawl through voluminous reports and documents that were produced by Transnet over the years. Like I said earlier on as well, we had to have access to their computers because some of the information might not necessarily have been printed in hard copy. They also didn't provide us with a soft copy of their portions of the server relating to 1064. Obviously, again, you can't rely purely on the documents because they can only take you up so far. We had to interview various people within Transnet, in particular those whose names would have arisen as we were perusing documents. There's a list of interviewees that we gave to the Commission yesterday, around about 20 or so members of Transnet who were also involved in a transaction. Not necessarily them being directly involved, but at least even those that would have had knowledge of some of the doings on the transaction. So we did conduct those interviews, and the interviews were all recorded to the knowledge of those that we were interviewing. The transcripts, should the Commission also require copies of the transcripts of the interviews, that will be gladly provided to the Commission. In actual fact, after my discussion with Advocate Mahlape yesterday, we have already assigned the team to get us all the copies of the transcripts of each and every person that we interviewed over a period of 18 months.
No, I think that will be very important,
Yes,
those transcripts of those interviews.
Correct.
And we shall submit them, but they're just to confirm that the transcripts themselves do not form part of the exhibits of the reports.
Yes.
So
Yes,
they will have
they-
to be submitted separately. And as soon as they are at hand, Chair, that should be before Transnet, the MNS rather, completes its assistance to you. We would find a way of submitting them formally into record.
Yeah, they would form part of the record
Yes, Chair.
on which the report was made.
Indeed, Chair.
Was based.
Indeed.
If there are transcripts, if there are statements
Indeed.
of witnesses, transcripts of interviews, statements of witnesses that were obtained, just like you have exhibits, documents that they obtained, those are all part of the record on which the report is made, which are quite important because to the findings made must be tested against the record that was available.
Correct.
Indeed, Chair. I just wanted, lest there is confusion, to clarify that the transcripts themselves are not exhibits to MNS reports. But the
Yes.
transcripts will be submitted to this
Yes.
Commission.
Yes.
And as Mr. Sudumedi indicated, they are currently being collated, and we
Yes.
hope that exercise to be complete before the week is over.
Yes, okay.
Thank you, Chair. Now, Mr. Sudumedi, you talk of engagements and interviews with Transnet officials. Must the Chair understand by that you mean persons who were still within the employ of Transnet at the time you were conducting the investigation?
Correct, Chair, yes. Because the focus at that stage was say, let's focus on the internal employees. In as much as we are quite mindful of the fact that there are people who are outside of Transnet who might have been involved. I mean, former employees like Mr. Pradimoli, as an example. Those were not part of the persons that we initially targeted to interview. We only focus on the internal ones so as to be able to enable the board to form a view as to what action must it take against anyone who has been identified. The plan being, once the reports are produced, then they will be made available to, as an example, even the employees themselves. As soon as the report was done, it was made available to the employees for them to respond to what the findings entailed. Indeed, there were various correspondence that was exchanged between the board, the new board, and some of the former employees who were implicated in the document. As expected, obviously, they would contest what was contained in the reports. But then the board then said, obviously, the only fair way of ensuring that people put their version is through normal disciplinary processes that the board intended to take. So that is, we close the subject of ensuring that the employees have a right of reply, if I can use that word. We also then requested to say, this affects external parties like the OEMs who were involved. In the last 4 months, we've been engaged in sense of Transnet to engage the OEMs to present to them our findings and as well what their take is on what we have found. And that process commenced only in December 2018 and is still ongoing. The same applies to various transaction advisors that we identified. We are engaging with them. The upwards of where we are converging, but obviously as expected, there are points where they hold a contrary view from what we are saying. So that is the approach. Then insofar as the former employees, in our report we said, and it was even before the Zondo Commission inquiry was actually in place, but we always knew at that time that there's going to be a judicial commission of inquiry on state capture. We made recommendations in chapter 5 of our volume 1 that people like those who are not part of Transnet currently, they must be referred to the commission for them to put their version of what is contained in our report. So that is put for each one of them who's not within Transnet on chapter 5 of our volume 1 that has been indicated.
So just to make sure I understand, after you had been appointed, MNS had been appointed, you put together a team that was going to conduct the investigation.
Yes.
In the course of that investigation, you interviewed a number of employees of Transnet.
Correct.
Now, are you saying that you didn't interview anyone at that stage before preparing the report, anyone who was outside of Transnet?
Correct, that's correct indeed, Chair.
Yes, okay. So once you had interviewed a number of Transnet employees and obtained documents and so on, you then prepared the report, is that right?
That's correct, Chair.
Yes. And you presented the report to the board.
Correct, Chair.
And there was an appreciation that there were some of the employees of Transnet who were implicated in the report. And it was decided by the board that those would be subjected to a disciplinary process where they would get a chance to put their side of the story.
Correct, Chair.
Yes. But those who may have been implicated, who were within Transnet, had also been interviewed by your team or not really?
Each and every person that has been implicated in our report was
interviewed.
Was interviewed, Chair.
So in a way, they had a chance to put their side of the story.
Correct, Chair.
But before any disciplinary action could be taken by the company, they would get the normal disciplinary process as well.
Correct, Chair.
But those that were outside of Transnet at the time you were conducting the investigation, you did not interview.
We did not interview those ones, Chair.
And that includes those who may have been at Transnet at some stage, but were no longer at Transnet when you conducted the investigation.
Correct, Chair.
Yes.
Except for Ms. Matani, who was the
Yes.
former head of Treasury at the time.
Yes.
I remember we did, because even by the time we did the investigation, she was no longer part of Transnet.
Yes.
We did have an interview with persons like those.
Yes, yes. Now, the decision not to interview those who were outside of Transnet, was that a decision that was taken simply because the investigation was seen as internal to Transnet, or was it because they were not cooperating even though they were approached?
It was twofold, Chair. The first part being, obviously, this was an internal process. And as well, we had to make a judgment call to say, given the extent of how some of them were implicated, what powers do we have as a team to can really, I want to use the word subpoena lightly, not
To get them to,
correct. Because at
Yes.
least with the employees, it was quite easy.
yes,
We just had an email to the powers that be that we need to consult with Mrs. So-and-so, Mr. So. Then all those persons will then subject themselves to the interview. So we didn't have a mechanism of forcing those who are outside of Transnet to cooperate with us. I mean, persons like Martina is an example we knew, because if you look at how she gets reflected in the report, it was more of basically having the same position that we had about the wrongdoings within Transnet. Which is why then, when we made our recommendations to Transnet in Chapter 5, to say persons like Mr. Molefe, Gary Peter, Singh, those ones we recommend that Transnet refer them to the Commission to ensure that at least with the powers that the Commission, because even at that time we weren't even quite sure of the extent of the powers that the Commission might have, but our own reading of the law was that obviously we'll be having
yes,
powers of subpoena, then
Yeah.
they can come and
yes,
say their
no, it
piece.
does, yeah.
Correct.
Yes. Okay, and then you talked about a process that you are still involved in now. What process is that?
We are currently running a pilot process, Chair. Like I said, when the board, a new board that is, they said, obviously, to an extent that you are not committed to investigations, proceed that aspect, which is why, as an example, some of the volumes only came up early this year. But at the same time, you must implement the findings to date. That's one part. That speaks to the institution of disciplinary proceedings, where possible institute civil actions against various individuals who have been identified. Prior to that process, the OEMs, because currently Transnet still has contractual arrangements with these OEMs, engage with these OEMs, because what we have found, obviously, impacts on the legality of these transactions. To an extent that there might be a need for Transnet to review these transactions. First port of call is to engage the OEMs and see to what extent we can commonly approach court, as an example, with a view of conceding that there were irregularities that taints these transactions, and jointly agree on a just and equitable remedy that can be placed before the court to see what will be the best way of dealing with the unlawfulness that we have picked up. So that process is underway. As I said, Chair, it commenced in November, December 2018. So that is the parallel process that we are running over and above, continuing with the investigations that we are conducting to give effect to our mandate.
So this phase is aimed at giving effect or implementing some of the findings, or the findings that you already made in the report.
Correct, Chair.
Okay. No, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And if you could just then finish off on the OEMs and the process that you're currently undertaking, would we be understanding you correctly if we understood you to mean that your engagement with the OEMs is a process parallel to this commission which is investigating the conduct of the OEMs itself. So there will be no impact, or there shouldn't be any, you don't expect your process to impact on this current commission?
Not quite, but if I can answer it this way. If we accept, as an example, that the outcomes of our volume 1 in particular puts to doubt the legality of the transactions that we've concluded
Yes.
with the OEMs. As an organ of state, obviously, we can't sit on our laurel and say, let's continue the relationship. We are duty bound to approach a court of law and say, we need to bring to attention of the court that these transactions are tainted with irregularity, and what will be the just and equitable remedy under the circumstances to deal with the transaction. So that, in a way, might obviously impact on what the Commission is doing, but that is only geared towards resolving the contractual relationship
Yes.
that is there between Transnet and the four OEMs.
Okay, that's clarified.
Maybe just to complete one of the points we discussed earlier on. So it would be fair to, would it be fair to say, to the extent that M&S investigation didn't involve persons who may have been implicated but who were not within Transnet, to that extent, it might not, the report might not contain the complete story.
If we accept that
Yes.
the story itself is not fully ventilated in the
Yes.
documents
Yes.
that were within Transnet,
Yes.
because this is why it was important for us to get access to the server,
Yes.
to
yes.
get the complete picture
Yes.
of what might have happened on this
Yes.
transaction.
Yes.
But to an extent that somebody who's outside might have documents which are not within Transnet,
Yes. Yes.
which he or she can use to rebut
Yes.
what is
Yes.
contained. Obviously, that's why we have said
Yes.
that person, then there's a forum
Yes.
called the Judicial State of
Yes.
Inquiry on the State Capture,
Yes.
where that
Yes.
person can then come and rebut
Yes.
whatever that the
Yes.
documents we have perused are saying.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Then, if I may just to make sure we are clear, you stand by your findings as are based on documentation you obtained from Transnet.
Correct, Chair.
Okay. Then,
So in effect, somebody who may be implicated obviously would have to deal with the findings you made without their input because of the constraints you had, because you couldn't force them to come and cooperate. They would have to deal with that and say, well, this is my side of the story. But you say, within those constraints and with the understanding that you couldn't compel people from outside, you are confident that the findings accord with the documentation that you got.
We are, Chair, but to mitigate against the risk of those persons not being able to ventilate their position, which is why the civil action that has been instituted, at least, because people
Yes.
have been sued.
Yes.
So at the right time and at the right
Yes.
forum, they will be able to respond
Yes.
to the pleadings that have been
Yes.
put before
Yes.
court,
Yes.
arising out of the very same investigations that we
Yes.
have spoken about.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
thank you, Chair. On your next slide deals with the results of investigations, and you simply list there that you compiled certain reports on the basis of the investigations you undertook.
Correct, Chair, yes. All this work then comes into the production of these 6 reports that we presented to Transnet. And these are the ones that form part of the record at the Commission.
And as you indicate, all these reports were presented to Transnet. and the board to act thereupon
Correct.
as it deems meet. Now, have any of these reports been provided to all the persons implicated in some or other wrongdoing in the report, or in the reports?
Like I said earlier on, with regard to the employees, indeed, all employees that whose names appear in the reports do have copies of the reports. All the 4 OEMs, to an extent that they were implicated in the transactions, because it's not all of them would have all the volumes, but as an example, volume 1 covers all the 4 OEMs, so all of them do have copies of the reports and the annexures to the reports. It is on that base that actually we are engaging with them to show them how we arrived at our conclusions and to demonstrate to them as well, look, these are the data that they have submitted. So like there's any document that was altered by any of the investigators or Transnet. So at least we are all operating on a common set of facts, if I can use that phrase.
So, when you said earlier on that those who were outside of Transnet were not interviewed, that didn't just relate to those who may have been inside Transnet at some stage but had left Transnet at the time of your investigation. It also meant anyone who were in the OEMs. Anyone who was not an employee of Transnet, you did not interview, is that right?
That's correct, Chair.
Those who were interviewed were only those who were employees of Transnet.
Correct, Chair.
And after the reports had been prepared, then you are, since December 2018, you are approaching other people to say, this is the report, this is what it says about you, let's talk.
Correct, Chair.
To see how we can, among other things, maybe recover money, or how we can jointly, how you can cooperate if an approach is made to a court to set aside this contract or whatever.
Correct, Chair.
Okay.
And if I may then just clarify on that, what the chair has described, it relates to engagements with third parties, and in this instance, OEMs that concluded contractual arrangements with Transnet.
Correct.
That statement does not concern former employees of Transnet who would be implicated or could be implicated by any of the reports.
Yes. So yes, I need to correct this. Obviously, yes, that doesn't speak to the former employees. Quite correct. Yes.
Now we understand the approach you have adopted in regard to the OEMs. What approach have you, or by you I mean Transnet, I should probably say that. Are you aware of the approach that Transnet has adopted regarding its former employees who are implicated insofar as making the reports available to them is concerned?
To our knowledge, we are not quite familiar with as to whether Transnet has decided to give the reports to former employees. If I can use Mr. Singh as an example, that part I'm not quite sure if Transnet did give that to those former employees. But I'm quite certain that the employees were definitely given the reports.
Okay. Now, if I may then turn briefly to the former employees. As you indicate, you do not know whether Transnet has shared the reports with them. Are you in engagement with them in any manner or form?
Save for the engagement via the litigation process, we are not in any way involved in formal discussions.
Now, when I turn to OEMs and understand that you are currently in engagements, to the extent that you explained to the chair, does that engagement or do those engagements include the OEMs providing their own version, or are they limited purely to accepting possible irregularities in the transactions and jointly taking steps with Transnet to address the irregularities? What exactly is the position of these engagements?
It varies, Chair. Let's use an example of NetBank as an example. In our preliminary report, we do make reference to we question the transactions that are conducted by regiments with the involvement of NetBank. We then asked NetBank to give us documents. It was apparent when we met that they had other documents which they think will rebut what you are saying, and as well, they were not even familiar with the document that we had. So we had to exchange documents to see to what extent are we in alignment, and if there are any points of disagreement, where are we disagreeing? So that I'm using that as an example.
Yes.
So it's only once we have ring-fenced the points of departures, we can then determine what course of action can be taken there. We use an example of GE. GE, that is one of the OEMs. By and large, in terms of the extent of the irregularities, they were not that, except to say that with the RFPs were not complaining at all, but things like local content, where GE complied. Those as well, we had sessions with them, exchanged documents, we agreed that this is okay, but if the LSA, not out of their own doing, is still irregularity, how then do we approach the court? Obviously, different tactic will be applied depending on the extent to which the irregularity is tainted with corruption, as an example. So we have a differentiated approach that will apply to various OEMs, and that will then dictate the type of approach that must be taken going forward.
So then, we must accept that insofar as OEMs are concerned, and any other third parties that contracted with Transnet in respect of any of these transactions, it is up to the Commission to obtain their version as regards the allegations made in the respective reports about them and the findings.
Correct, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Chair, it has been pointed out to me I've encroached onto your tea time. Terribly too.
Well, maybe let's go up to 1:30, then we
Okay,
can.
I'm happy to.
Yeah.
Then against that understanding and that background, can you just briefly help us understand the various reports that you issued and what each deals with?
Okay. Volume 1, which was produced in June 2018, deals in the main with the actual procurement of the 1064 locomotives.
Yes.
The RFPs that were issued, what happened, what are the irregularities that arise out of the procurement process. That's volume 1.
Yes.
Volume 2A speaks to the irregularities relating to the acquisition of the transaction advisors. Because for Transnet to engage in this transaction, it required expertise of lawyers and commercial people. So again, we focus on the procurement aspects of that transaction. 2B now analyzes the transactions that Transnet concluded on the advice of these TAs. You might have heard earlier on the other testimonies, the swaps that the GCE spoke about. So that's what is contained in 2B. 3A speaks to the procurement of the 95 locomotives. That transaction always happened prior to the 1064 acquisition. So 95 is dedicated to that, as well as speaks to the procurement irregularities that occurred in that transaction, followed by the procurement of the 100 locomotives, which occurred at the same time when 1064 was acquired. You might have heard Mr. Kallard as an example, and the GC speaking about the confinement of these 100 locomotives, as well, and lastly then the relocation of CNR and BT to Durban. Okay. So that's what is contained in those various reports.
Then, you have prepared, I think, a slide to help us understand the interrelationship, if any, between the various transactions. If you could.
Correct, yes. I think what I've said earlier on, I think is grammatically, not schematically represented by this particular slide. So, like I said, it's a 95. You will see that RFP was issued in December 2012 and was awarded in September of the following year. And then there's the procurement of the 100 locomotives. For purpose of logic, because if you look at these slides, 1064 would have happened first. but we know that during the course of 1064, 100 cropped up. But just to make things easy for the commission, we've thought let's focus on 100 first, then we can focus on 1064. Now, on 1064, you will note as well on the slides there that that's where the issue of the transaction advisors would have been involved. So there's a volume 2A and B that focuses on the procurement of the TAs that happened in June 2012, and as well the relocation. So all the TAs and relocation speak directly only to 1064. There were no TAs on the 95 and the 100 locomotives. So that's the purpose of this particular diagram.
And you propose to follow the order of your bubbles there in helping us. So we'll
Correct.
start with 95, followed by 100. We then turn our attention to 1064 and the two side transactions that emanate from 1064.
Correct. That will make it quite easier for one to follow the various transactions.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. It's drawn to my attention. It's now 4:30 before I run over again.
Yes, we'll take the tea adjournment and we'll resume at 11:45.
Thank you.
Chair.
We're coming out of the State Capture Commission in Park Town.
Yeah. You heard from Mr. Tsiamo Sirberi on behalf of MNS attorneys, and as we've been mentioning, he's been giving evidence on the procurement of locomotives by Transnet. And remember, MNS was asked to investigate alleged irregularities relating to the procurement, and he was speaking about basically the process that was followed in compiling these reports. And in the course of the investigation, a number of Transnet employees were interviewed, as well as those implicated were also interviewed.
Yeah.
So he was telling us a bit more about that, and you were watching some of the slides that they prepared with regards to the various transactions. So we're going to leave it for now.
Yes, you may proceed.
Thank you. We are ready, Chair. You just presented a slide indicating the different transactions that you investigated. Can you briefly tell the Chair how it came about you investigated this? Were you investigating Transnet and transactions within Transnet in general, or were you investigating only specific transactions? And if it is the latter, on what basis you confined yourself to certain transactions?
Yes, like I said in my introductory slide, the point of entry for us was 1064, because at that time, like I said, there were various media allegations about the irregularities arising out of 1064 in particular. Which is why even Verex months as well, when you appointed on their report, we focus on that aspect. So our point of entry was 1064, a specific transaction. But now, obviously, as you are going through 1064, that's when now other transactions spawn out of 100, as an example, the TAs and the relocation. All those are related to 1064. But now, during our investigations, then it also then came to our attention and turned out that there was another transaction of a locomotive acquisition, which also was problematic. That's where 95 comes in. So there were specific transactions that we were limited to investigating. And as well, like I said, even later on, because this was more of a due diligence on the legalities of the transaction. We will see the common thread in our report is about irregularities. So it's more a legal analysis of what transpired. What are the documents saying about these issues? So that also helped in terms of limiting a need to be interviewing people from outside of town, because the documents themselves, as they sit and confirmed as well by the internal employees as to what transpired, that was able to give us and put us in a better position to reach conclusions that we have came up with in our report.
Would it be fair to describe your investigation as, for all intents and purposes, an internal Transnet investigation, but conducted by people from outside Transnet?
That is a perfect summation of our mandate,
Yes.
Chair.
Yeah.
Correct.
They may as well have conducted it themselves internally, but for certain reasons they preferred that it be done by outside people, but it was otherwise an internal investigation.
That's correct, Chair.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. And therefore, that's why we understand that we have specific transactions you are limited to. It is what we are requested to do, and you could not go beyond the scope of your mandate.
That's correct, Chair.
You then get to the next slide where you give us a background to the acquisition of locomotives, and the Chair will be familiar with some of the issues there because certain witnesses have testified there too.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
You could just.
The purpose of the slide in the main, Chair, was just to give context to why the number 1064 is that this number comes from a fleet plan that Transnet produced in 2011. And you'll note in that fleet plan, it plans to acquire 1202 locomotives within their general freight business. Now, the procurement of that then was then staggered. In 2011, a business case was approved to first acquire the 138, being the 43 electric diesel and the 95 that I spoke about earlier. So there are two transactions that preceded the 1064, which is why now if you look at, you minus the 43 and the 95, that's why we are then left with 1064. So those was the only transaction that was not acquired during 2011. So that's the purpose of this particular slide, just to give context to how do you arrive at the figure of 1064.
Now, you indicate that of the 1202 approved locomotives, 95 electric locomotives and 43 diesel locomotives business case was developed to acquire them separately, thus leaving a balance of 1064.
Correct, Chair.
Now, the 95 electric locomotives you refer to, are those the same locomotives on which you intend to comment shortly?
Correct, Chair.
Now, can you tell the Chair about the 43 diesel locomotives, that process, and any transactions undertaken in the course of that? Have you investigated that? If not, why not?
We did not investigate the 43 because it was never part of our mandate. Like I said earlier on, which confirms the whole issue of saying it was only specific transactions that we were mandated to investigate. 43 was not part of our mandate, and even from our own preliminary assessment, there seems to have been no issue with the acquisition of the 43. But obviously that I cannot say because we have not actually done a thorough investigation of the 43. It was not part of our scope. But 95 and the rest, yes.
Okay. And then against that background, you then deal with procurement of the 95 specifically.
Correct, Chair. Now, in dealing with 95, Chair, we'll just, again, at a high level, speak about the background to the acquisition of the 95, what our key findings were in that investigation. We speak meaning, and there are various issues that we touch upon, and as well to disclose that Fundutsi as well did conduct an investigation on 95. By and large, we were in agreement, but we thought it appropriate as well to highlight the two areas where we differed with Fundutsi on the findings that they have made. But in the main, we are on all fours in terms of the findings that they've made. But yeah, but that will be our last slide when we deal with that aspect.
Okay.
Now,
may I continue?
Like we said earlier on, the board, after the approval of the 1202 fleet plan, a business case was developed to acquire 93 and 43, 98, basically 95 electric and 43 diesel. The estimated total cost on the 95 was 2.6 billion. And the board, as required by Section 54.2 of the PFMA, which requires that if an intellect Transnet wishes to procure or to dispose or acquire a significant asset, it needs to get the permission of the executive authority and as well notify Treasury. So that we know was done on the acquisition of 95, and that appears in volume 11 on page 3864 of the bundle.
May I correct you there? I think it's page 8364, not 3864.
Transposition error.
8364, yes. And at 8364 is the approval by the minister for Transnet to acquire the 95 electric locomotives for an estimated cost of 2.6 billion.
Correct, Chair.
And you express the view that that approval is appropriate and consistent with the provisions of the PFMA.
Correct.
Okay.
And as you can see, the approval was obtained on the 21st of December 2011.
Yes.
And then that led to, a week earlier, the tender was then issued, advertised, and we know now, but we'll talk about how CSR got in, but it's common cause that CSR was the successful bidder in this 95 transaction.
And just to remind ourselves, this was on an open tender basis, not on a confinement basis.
This was an open tender process.
Okay. You then proceed in your slides to highlight the key findings you make in your report regarding this transaction.
Correct. When we reviewed various documents relating to this transaction, I think it was quite apparent that from a very, very early stage, CSR seems to have enjoyed some special relationship with Transnet. And that's happened both prior to the issuance of the RFP itself and during the procurement process. And we'll take the chair through various correspondence that we picked up that seems to demonstrate that at the very least there was an improper engagement and communication between the executives, some executives, and CSR during the procurement process of these 95 locomotives.
Okay.
If you can start on volume 11, page 8527, we find an email from Mr. Gary Peter.
Just, if you, excuse me, Mr. Sidumedi, Chair, at this juncture, we'll need you perhaps to get volume 11 because we will not be projecting that particular document on the screen.
Okay. Well, looks like the volumes are not put in accordance with their correct sequence.
Shouldn't have happened, Chair. I don't know how. May we attend to that at lunch?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Well, I may be wrong.
Much relieved to hear,
Okay.
Chair.
All right. What page?
He had referred us to 8527, Mr. Sidumedi.
Correct, Chair.
Yes, we are at 8527.
At the bottom of 8527, you'll see on that page, Chair.
1 second, let me get there. Yes, I've got it.
At the bottom of that page, because there are two emails in that page, Chair. Right at the bottom, because the top one is a response to the one at the bottom.
Yes.
In that email from Mr. Peter on the 16th of December 2011, it's addressed to Mr. Wang Pan. Mr. Wang Pan is from CSR. I'm not quite sure.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to get where you get, oh, yes.
About two-thirds way of the page, yes, Chair.
Wang Pan. Okay, no, I was looking at the email address and I was looking for the same name, but I think his email address doesn't reflect his name. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, all right, yes.
Correct. Only question, you want me to go to read or summarize as per the slides?
You may summarize them to the extent, only to the extent necessary may you read, but you brought us to this document to make when you make the point that CSR seems to have enjoyed a special relationship with Transnet, and pointed to some irregular communication between CSR as a bidder and Transnet.
Okay.
But because it's a very short one, he may as well just read, yeah.
Okay.
But if it's a long one, he could summarize. Yeah.
Is dear Mr. Wang Pan, my CEO, Mr. Brian Molefe, advised me that you met in early December. He also stated that CSR Zuzu Electric Locomotive, that's CSR, showed interest in participating in our next tender for 95 electric locomotives. I wish to advise you that this tender has been released and is available from Transnet Freight Rail. I'm not sure whether CSR is aware of this and has already bought the tender documents. You'll see overleaf the email regards Gary Peter being the group supply chain officer. Right? From this email, you could pick up that Mr. Peter was confirming that there was some meeting that actually happened early in December, where CSR expressed an interest in an upcoming tender. That's what, now, if you are referring to an upcoming tender, it means at that time, surely the tender wouldn't have been issued at that stage.
Yes.
And if you look at the top of that page, now is a response from Mr. Wang Pan. Dear Mr. Peter, thank you for your email. We were very pleased to have the chance to meet with your group CEO, Mr. Brian Molefe, at the beginning of December. We expressed our interest in your tender for 95 electric locomotives and the South Africa market as well. Regarding the tender document, we are contacting with Mr. That's supposed to be Miss, because we know Ms. Linda is a Miss Linda Mdletshe, and transferring money to your account for getting the document. Due to only the SA rent is acceptable. The money transfer process is a little bit complicated, but we believe that we could get a tender document in this week. You are very kind to facilitate us your support on the tender document if we need and inform you. So now, two things come out of this letter. One, at least Mr. Wangpan confirms that indeed a meeting happened with Mr. Molefe in early December. And now they are also now aware, because you will recall as well, by this time of the 19th of December, the tender was already issued now in 6th December. So that's what we pick up from this email.
Yes.
Now, on the 19th of, we go to page 8530 of the same volume. It's now an email from Mr. Wangpan, in essence attaching, we'll go to the letter as it appears on 8531, but for now, this is an attachment. Here, Mr. Molefe, please be so kind to check the attached letter. So it's just an attachment of a letter which has already been faxed to you.
And this is 19th January.
This is 19 January 2012. You'll note, Chair, if you look at the attachment, it says 2011.
Yes.
This seems to have been a typo on their side, because I mean, if the email was sent in 2012, we cannot attach. So we assumed that is because in 2011 there was no 95 locomotive acquisition in any event. So the letter that is being attached is dated 19 January 2011, but the assumption, a reasonable conclusion that we reached was that this 2011 is supposed to refer to 2012, especially as well if you look at the contents of the letter.
Yeah, well, early in January, people, when they put the date in correspondence, they still use, sometimes they still
Correct.
use the previous
Correct.
year, so maybe that was what it was.
Yes, so it's quite an excusable error on their part.
But the email date as well appears to be incorrect, because you indicated that the public tender notice was issued on the 6th of December 2012 regarding 95. And I see the email says it's dated Thursday, 19 January 2012, which will precede the tender by 12 months. And yet when one has regard to the letter attached over leaf, which is, the letter itself is dated 2011, to confound things even further, there is reference to the 95 and the 34 locomotives. And we know that decision was only taken in 2012.
Not, the tender was issued in 2011.
2011?
2011.
Then
December.
please-
Or what
I'm
was
just
it?
checking. Correct. Maybe let's go to the actual tender advert. It appears on volume 8370. Let's just confirm.
On this volume 8370,
Yeah,
okay?
8370. Correct, yes.
So it is 2011.
The
December
tender was advertised in 6 December 2011,
Yes.
which is why the email is dated 19. We were on
We're at 8531 now, yes.
85.
8530.
85. Now, the essence of this
Sorry,
letter-
before we get into that then, this is for record purposes. You might want to consider your slide 12. The date you give there, I think, is erroneous because you call it the 6th of December 2012.
It's 6 December 2011. My
It's
apologies.
2011, you must read, yes.
Correct.
Okay. All right, please proceed.
Now, in this letter, CSR, Mr. Wangpan, addresses to Mr. Brian Molefe. We must recall at this stage, Chair, the tender advert itself, it indicates who is a person that you need to contact in the event that you've got a query on this tender. If you go to the advert itself, it indicates Ms. Linda Mdleja is a person that you must liaise with in the event you've got queries. You will also recall in the email that he sent to Mr. Peter, he did indicate that we are liaising with Ms. Lindy Mdletshe to obtain the tender documents and all related issues. Now, in his letter addressed to Mr. Molefe, 3 issues come out of that letter. One, he thanks Mr. Molefe for giving CSR an opportunity to tender for the 95 locomotives. That appears on the first paragraph of that letter. That's the first paragraph. In the second paragraph, he then advised Mr. Molefe that the CSR delegation that will attend the tender briefing session, because it was, in terms of the tender, there was going to be a briefing session on the 31st of January 2012. So he advised him that indeed CSR will be attending, and takes the liberty of even outlining the nature of the delegation that will be attending that briefing session. That is contained, Chair, in the third paragraph, where he says, for ease of reference, would like to participate in a briefing session held on this date, and this, our Vice General Manager, Mr. Fu Chen-jun, will lead a delegation that consists of those 3 persons.
Yes.
But he does indicate that they will be in South Africa from the period 30 January to 3 February. Now, the next paragraph that follows, Mr. Wangpan seeks the support of Mr. Molefe in 4 issues. One, you'd want to have a meeting with Mr. Molefe for a discussion of cooperation, as they phrased it in their document. Secondly, Mr. Molefe must assist in arranging a meeting with, when he says your, something that can only be Transnet's technical group, to discuss and optimize the technical specifications of this tender. 4, he also wants him to arrange a site visit that CSR may conduct at some of the locomotive depots or the engineering factories to study the existing electric locomotives. And as well, for him to assist in the discussions with potential private companies that they can work with for localization. He calls it localization work. So the assumption there is that maybe to get the local partners. So that's what Mr. Molefe must assist in arranging. Now, we then find a response from Mr. Molefe Overleaf on page 8533, the same volume.
Yes.
He responds first, courteously thanking Mr. Wangpan for the letter and indicating to him that he has forwarded the letter from this request to Mr. Siyabonga Gama, who will then respond and process the request by CSR. And indeed, if you look at that email, Mr. Gama is copied on that correspondence. Now, obviously, we don't have any record of whether any of these meetings happened after this issue, but 2 issues come out of that issue. Like I said earlier on, Ms. Mdletshe and I think Ms. Asagai were the 2 persons that were supposed to be contacted. In the event that you've got any query about this tender, those are the 2 persons that you must liaise with. CSR is able to do a direct letter to the GCE. The GCE, in his response, he doesn't say, sorry, Mr. Wangpan, we are now in a procurement space. Please refer all your queries to Ms. Mdletshe, as indicated in the RFP advert. It simply says, in actual fact, I will send this request to Mr. Gama, who was at that stage the acting, no, he was the GE group, the CE, my apologies, chief executive at TFR, where these locomotives were going to be procured. Now, the conclusion that we reached on is that in view of all this, it confirms the view that CSR seems to have enjoyed this special relationship, and it creates a reasonable apprehension that CSR might have been favored over other bidders, because within the procurement space, fairness and transparency is key. You can't, as an organ of state, be seen to be favoring a particular entity, especially during the procurement space. In as much as you might not necessarily have a direct evidence that confirms subsequent meetings, but that is sufficient to create a reasonable apprehension and perception that indeed the relationship between Transnet, at least some of its executives, and CSR is not in line with the spirit and purport of a fair and competitive tender process.
Now, we know this is around 19 January 2012. Do you know where the evaluation process or the tendering process was at as of January 2012?
But maybe before that question, the conclusion that you were talking about a possible relationship between CSR and either Mr. Brian Molefe or Mr. Gama, you are not at this stage because of just this one letter or email saying that there was an improper relationship. I take it that what you are saying is there may be something inappropriate about this direct communication to people other than the one who has been given in the tender documents as the person to be contacted about this tender. So in other words, if you are interested in the tender and you have been told that the person to be contacted about this tender at Transnet is Ms. Mdletshe, that's the person you write to, not to other people. But there may well be other things that you came across in your investigation that on which you might base your conclusion.
Correct,
right?
Which is why if you now look at what
Yes.
follows thereafter, then it
Yes.
seems to fortify
Yes.
this view that this is not an innocent communication that can be said to be a once-off. So that must be viewed in the context of subsequent events that occur in this particular transaction.
Okay. I interrupted while...
Yes, Chair.
Yes.
No, I wanted to understand if to find out from Mr. Sidumedi whether he can recall off the top of his head where the evaluation or tender process was at as at January 2019. Was the evaluation completed?
2012,
Was 2012?
Yeah.
19 January 2012, which is the date of the communication. To your recollection, was the evaluation underway? Had it been completed? Had a decision been taken on the tenders?
No, Chair. You recall that on the same email, it confirms that the briefing session will only take place at the end of January. So at this stage, there's no evaluation of the bid as yet.
Okay.
Because in actual fact, even the briefing session has not occurred. So that even tells us that even a tender date was not yet there. So not wasn't there, that the tender had not closed by this particular period.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We have dealt with the communication that you call inappropriate of January 2012.
Okay.
What's next you'd like to draw the Chair's attention to?
Right. It is now the evaluation of this bid. If you go to that slide, is a summary of the evaluation criteria that was prescribed in the RFP. If you go to page 8399, the same volume, 8399.
Yes.
In terms of the evaluation criteria contained in that, Chair, will be paragraph 29. This document that appears on page 8399 is the actual copy of the RFP document starting on page
8371, perhaps?
It starts on page 8372. That's the RFP document for the supply of 95 electric locomotives. Just to close up that discussion we had earlier on, you will see that the closing date was 28 February 2012, as it appears on page 8372. So the paragraphs that I've referred the chair to on page 8399 speaks to the evaluation criteria that was stipulated in this particular bid. There were 3 stages that the RFP envisaged. Stage 1, and it says that Transnet will utilize, I'm reading, Chair, under paragraph 29, Transnet SOC.
Thank you. Yes, I'm there.
Transnet SOC Limited will utilize the following criteria in selecting a preferred supplier, if so required. Now, we'll focus also on stage 1. So stage 1, just to summarize, it required the bidders to have a BBBE certificate. They must complete forms that will indicate their commitment to supply development, which are listed there under. They go over to page 8400. But what is important, Chair, is a block that appears at the bottom of that stage 1. So this is a stage 1 requirement. It says an overall minimum threshold of 60% for stage 1 evaluation must be met or exceeded for a respondent's proposal to progress to stage 2. It means stage 1 is your gatekeeper. You cannot proceed to further stages until you at least acquire 60% for this stage 1 or exceed that stage.
Yes.
Now,
So what it means is that points would be added up that you get under the different criteria under stage 1.
correct.
And if you fall under 60% in terms of your total, then you don't proceed to stage 2. But if you achieve 60% and more, then you go to
Then you can
stage
then be very further on stage 2.
2. Okay.
So that's what was put in the RFP that was advertised. So all the bidders, when they receive the bids, when they respond, they know they must comply with this requirement. If you think you're not going to comply, obviously, then you won't even bother to participate in this bid.
Yes.
Now, what happens is that, obviously now, when the bids are received, there's what they call a cross-function evaluation team. Basically, it's a team that evaluates the bids in accordance with the requirements in the RFP. The next slide, there's a document. I'm not sure if Dr. Mahlapi were able to, this TS1.
No, I haven't. You refer at slide 18 to TS1.
Correct.
And I require you to introduce it to the chair for me to hand it in.
Okay. Chair, in our report, when it was submitted to the commission, the this document was going to be an annexure to a memorandum that appears on, I'll be with you now. Just it now. You can just bear with me for a second.
Okay.
On page 8535, we'll touch on this memorandum just to put context into this document.
Okay.
The memo on 8535, they attached a CFET report.
8535.
8535, which appears on 8539.
Yes.
But when this was copied to the commission, we attached an incorrect safe because there were different safety reports.
Yes.
The one for technical and the one for finance. So we inserted a finance one.
Okay.
So 8539 does not at all speak to 8535. So this document that we are introducing is a correct version of what was supposed to appear on 8539.
Okay.
So this one that I presently have will be replaced by another one.
It has to be replaced.
Yeah.
Chair. The issue is,
And so we come out of the state capture inquiry for now. For more on the David Mabuza story, I'm joined in the studio by political analyst Nompumelelo Mrunji. She's from Democracy Works. Thanks very much for joining us, Nompumelelo.
Thank you so much for having me, Nupu.
Good stuff. So by virtue of David Mabuza now being sworn into Parliament later this afternoon, is it basically a fait accompli that President Ramaphosa is likely to appoint him as Deputy President of the country?
Yes, we can.
slide 18 indicates, we have marked it TS1 for reference, and he shall be dealing with it shortly.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Mr. Sudumede, we have handed in TS1
Okay.
as per your slide 18 to the Chair.
Correct. Now, in applying this criteria,
The criteria we've just dealt with
Stage
is
one,
stage one,
yes.
you must acquire at least 60%. Yes.
correct. The coming slide, if you go to page on a document, it is marked page 5.
Yes,
That's
go
page
ahead.
5 of TS1.
Correct. What you see on the slides there is an exact replica of the table that appears on page 5,
Yes,
which indicates that on an application of the stage 1 criteria, 3 bidders qualified to proceed. That's Siemens. You see at the bottom of the document here, it shows the scores. Siemens, on top are the names of the bidder. That's Siemens, the first one. It got 63%, Bombardier 70%. And you go to the far right, is SSMM Consortium. They also met and exceeded the 60% threshold. So only 3 bidders qualified to progress to stage 2.
and then on the same table, we see after Bombardier, there is certain railways, but CNR Global, is that China North Rail?
That's China North Rail.
And it scored 40%. And CSR Zuzu scored 56%.
Correct.
So this is after applying the criteria as stipulated in the RFP.
Correct.
Okay.
And as you can note, you'll see under item 1, there is a triple BE scorecard. The reason that they fell short, amongst others, is that they were scored 0, because that's what the RFP required, that if you do not have the triple B certificate, then you'll be scored 0. So they then fall below the required 60% threshold.
Okay.
However, what happens is that at the CFET now, which is this report
TS1.
TS1, they decide to create an alternative evaluation criteria.
Who is they now?
The CFET,
The cross-functional?
the cross-functional evaluation team
Yes.
will in detail analyze their reasons for now, but I can draw the chair's attention to paragraph
At page 2 of that,
Page
paragraph
2.
4, it starts with evaluation methodology.
Correct.
And overleaf, it introduces concepts of option 1 and option 2.
Correct.
Is that what you,
That's what I
okay.
refer to. So we'll, in subsequent slides, Chair, analyze these reasons, but what they do, they create an alternative evaluation criteria where now they remove triple B because they indicate in their report that the RFP required a B certificate.
Yeah, I think both of you have, oh, I've lost both of you now.
Okay.
We were dealing with stage 1,
Correct.
and we were looking at the criteria, and we're looking at the points which various bidders got, and you said only 3 were able to satisfy the requirement that you must at least get 60% in order to proceed to stage 2.
Correct.
Where are you now?
Correct. Let me start. Now, during that evaluation, this same team that
During
is
the stage 1 evaluation?
correct, Chair.
Okay.
During the
all
stage
right.
1 evaluation, the officials who are tasked to implement the provisions of the RFP
Yes.
on their own accord decide to amend the evaluation criteria
Yes.
by removing the requirement of a triple B scoring and create what they called option 2 evaluation.
Now, is that a body with a particular name that is doing that now?
It's called the cross-functional evaluation team.
Okay, cross-functional evaluation team, yeah.
It's a
Okay.
team that would have been set up internally to evaluate
Yes,
the technical
Whether-
aspects of.
yeah, and award points.
Correct, Chair.
Okay, all right.
Correct.
So they change or amend the criteria applicable to stage 1?
Correct, Chair.
Yes, okay.
Correct. Now, for now, let's look at the results of their, because all that they do, they remove the requirement for triple BE, they only evaluate supply development. If you go to the next slide,
Yes.
these are now the results of them having removed.
Now, I think one of the reasons why you seem to lose you is, I think you may be jumping from
Oh, slide
the
to
exhibit
document.
to another document without telling me.
It's
So which
noted, Chair.
document are you now looking at?
We are now back in the slides, Chair.
Yes.
We are looking at page 20. In fact, it starts at slide 19 tells us that the CFET amended the evaluation criteria.
Okay, all right.
And now, Miss-
As you change,
I'll recall
let
that.
me know, then I
Absolutely.
can follow. Okay,
And please try and remember, Mr. Stumedi, when you refer us.
I will work with the
change
Chair.
over.
okay.
Correct. So, slide 20 is a replica of an option 2 or alternative option that was created by the CFET. And
Yes.
just to confirm, the contents of this slide is derived. If now, Chair, we go back to that CFET report.
Just 1 second, I'm trying to catch up with what you were dealing with before. So where the did you say cross-functional?
Cross-functional evaluation team.
Yes, where the page which reflects the amendment where they were amending, which page is that?
That's the one, Chair, which is why I was taking Chair to, when we now go, as I was saying, slide 20
Yeah,
is a replica of, now the Chair, we must now go to the actual CFET report. Page 6 of the CFET report.
For the record, it's a document submitted in currently marked TS1.
yes,
Now, if I may assist, if Chair, we go a few slides back.
yes.
If I understand, Mr. Stumedi, please listen to me, and if I'm correct, I'm wrong, please correct me. At 18, slide 18, Mr. Stumedi says, in terms of TS1, which is the correct cross-functional evaluation team report, we have a table indicating what the results are when you apply the evaluation criteria prescribed by
As is,
As
or
is.
as they are.
Yeah, as they
the
are.
criteria, yeah.
So insofar as stage 1 is concerned,
Yes.
when CFET applies the criteria, the results are that the only 3 companies reach or exceed the minimum threshold of 60%.
And they,
And that's
Do
at
not
slide
include-
18, the
they
blocks
don't-
in green at the
yes,
bottom.
it's SSMM Consortium, and then Siemens and Bombardier.
That's correct, Chair.
Yes.
Then,
That's the result of an application.
Proper
of
application of the,
the authorized criteria.
absolutely, Chair.
Or advertised criteria.
As advertised.
Yes, yes.
Mr. Sidumedi then indicates that in the same annexure TS1, the cross-functional evaluation team notes that when applied strictly, you get that result.
Yes,
It then, on its own accord, suggests what it calls option 2,
yes.
and it deals that in the report.
Oh, and.
The next
yes,
table,
Yes,
again extracted from TS1, shows the results of evaluation on the basis of option 2,
of the amended.
of the
criteria.
amended, which is
Option 2
is
is
the
the amended criteria.
indeed, Chair.
Yes, but where it makes the decision, is that on a particular page? That's what I'm looking for.
At TS1,
Yes,
if you could
Chair.
take us to that.
If you go, Chair, paragraph 4 of the actual report TS1,
Yes,
headed evaluation methodology,
yes,
it outlines the methodology that it used. Maybe let's read that.
yes,
As the information was extracted from the RFP document, as well as the relevant annexures, the tenderers were evaluated on the above mentioned SD criteria, which accounted for 80%. Triple BE and FRC. FRC is further recognition criteria, accounting each for 10%. Hence, the effective weight for SD is 48%. Right? Overleaf. The intention of SD is to address the NGP, the New Growth Path Objectives. That's a policy by the DTI. The RFP in stage 1, this is what they are saying now. RFP in stage 1 refers to triple BE and FRC, which in some instance is in conflict with the initial SD spirit. Therefore, the team had 2 options, namely option 1, include triple BE and FRC in SD evaluation stage 1, which might mean that foreign tenderers who do not have local offices will be prejudiced. Such companies, if registered locally as startup enterprises, will be able, there's a typo on their side, but as it is, will be able, deemed to have a triple BE status of level 4 contributor.
so that must be intended to
Will be deemed.
It will be able to be deemed.
To correct,
They wanted to enable them to be
correct,
deemed, yeah.
correct. So they make reference to the codes of good practice. So this says, if you are a startup enterprise, you will be deemed to be a triple BE level 4 in the first year of operation, as per the codes of good practice. Then the option 2, which we were talking about earlier on, Chair. Option 2 is to evaluate the SD specifics only and evaluate triple BE and FRC in stage 3. Transnet expectation was that a minimum SD target of 60% of the respondents' bid will be offered as part of the SDB document to be submitted, excluding BE. Indeed, given the nature of the bid involving foreign companies, this could not be fairly evaluated on their BE status and FRC. In any case, triple BE and FRC will be evaluated at stage 3, which is why then in the next paragraph they then outline the results of using the different options which we were talking about earlier on. Option 1, it is those 3 entities, and option 2, you'll note now that we now have 5 entities And if the chair can have regard to page 6 of the same document. For now, let's park the slides. Because, hence I was saying, the slide appearing on page 20 is a replica of what is contained in page 6. You will note that now on this option 2, Chair, you will see that triple BE is not taken into account at all now. It's only supplier development related items which are being evaluated. Now, Siemens is still in 70%, Bombardier 77, CSR, which in option 1, with the triple BE was not qualifying, they now meet and exceed the 60% threshold. And another company called Nilesco, and as well now SSM Consortium, which in any event on option 1 they were qualifying, they are still in. So where for option 1, which was an RFP criteria, you had 3 bidders that met the threshold. We now have 5, which 5 include CSR, after applying the amended evaluation criteria.
So is it it's CSR and which one which have come through now?
Nilesco 85, that's a company that appears on the right, to the right of CSR, Nilesco 85.
Yes.
They are now
okay.
on 70% because you will recall in their explanation that appears on
Page 3 of the document first.
correct. Let's go to page 2
Okay.
of that document. Chair. There's a paragraph 2, triple BE evaluations. It says,
Yes.
the Transnet cross-functional evaluation team commenced with triple BE evaluation of stage 1. Triple B points were allocated based on a 10 points, B status level, because that depends. If you are a level 1, you obviously get more points compared to those who are further down in the levels. As part of the evaluation, CFET further confirmed whether triple B certificates as submitted by the tenderers were SANAS accredited or IRBA accredited. 2 tenderers were scored based on the following. Nilesco submitted a triple B certificate that was not SANAS accredited, because in the RFP it required people to submit a SANAS accredited certificate, which could get that was not accredited, which could get a SANAS accredited certificate if it becomes a preferred bidder. That's what it's apparent now, that Nilesco did not submit a valid certificate. 2B, CSR is a foreign company that is committed to a JV with a local company if it becomes a preferred bidder. So we now know at this stage, CSR does not have a B certificate. It simply indicates that if you are successful, we'll then have a JV with a local company, which is why it explains the 2 entrants when you apply the amended evaluation criteria. So that's why Nilesco and CSR now get into or qualify on amended evaluation criteria to progress to stage 3. Now, in slide 21, we simply summarize what I've just read to say these are the justifications that were used by CFET in amending the evaluation criteria. What then happens is that on 6 June 2012,
Well, before that, this amendment of the criteria at stage 1, it looks like the changing of the rules of the game when the game is on.
The chair has
The game starts, everybody knows what the rules are. If you're talking about soccer, you know when do you have an offside, you know when you get a penalty. Everybody knows the rules. Somewhere when the game is on, the rules are changed. And on this, they are changed without the knowledge of, at least at this stage, I don't know later, the knowledge of the participants.
Participants being the bidders.
At
Correct.
this stage.
At this stage, correct.
Yes.
That's why this a recommendation is being made by CFET.
Yes.
Which is why now, because CFET doesn't have powers to change.
Yes.
So which is why now on 6 June,
Yes.
Mr. Gianni, and that is contained chair, but just to close that point, indeed, what appears here is the chair's preempted our conclusion in our report that tenderers submit bids based on the rules of the game. You make a choice before you bid whether to participate or not by looking at the criteria. If you know that you won't meet this set criteria, always then you make a choice that you are not going to participate. Now, it becomes unfair if during the game, if I use the chess analogy, we are now told as soccer players that no, there's no more offside. So even those of us who are not good soccer players, then had we known that offside is not no longer a requirement, then we are going to participate or take interest in a soccer, the sport of soccer. So what happens here, midstream?
Yeah, sorry, before you move on to Mr. Gianni, just so we understand, we have our set of criteria, there's an evaluation, at least CSR, let's concentrate on that for now, scores 56% is below. As the chair says, you change the rules midstream, you re-evaluate.
Correct.
And when you re-evaluate now on your own new set of evaluation criteria as the CFET, CSR now has scored 69%.
Correct, yeah.
And now it has met and exceeded the minimum threshold.
Correct.
Okay.
Which makes them to progress on that assumption, at that stage, then CSR qualifies to progress to the next stage.
Okay.
So what then happens is that on slide 22, it's Mr. Gianni, who at that stage was a chief procurement officer at TFR, and Mr. Siang Bongagama, at that stage was a chief executive at Transnet, prepare a memorandum that appears on.
I think you have an error there with
It's
your
volume 11.
numbering. Yes.
Page 8535 of the chair's volume 11.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm looking at your slide 22 at the top, 6 June 2012. You were saying what happened, and then I hear there's an error.
Okay, it's volume 1. That where it says volume 1 is supposed to be volume 11.
Okay. You want me to help?
No, Chair.
I don't
The
need to
error
help.
is in the slide.
So it
That
should
is
be
correct.
volume
Volume 11, not
11.
volume 1.
Okay,
Yes, Chair.
okay. Okay.
So the same
Yes.
volume we have before us. Yes, Mr. Sudumedi.
Yes, in that memorandum
At 8535.
8535,
Would you like us to go there?
let's go to 8535.
But before we go there,
Yes, Chair.
are these the two people to which that team was making recommendations? You said earlier on they didn't have the power to change, but they were making recommendations.
Correct.
The team that was, so maybe I guess we shouldn't say they were amending, but they were proposing they were recommending an amendment of the criteria.
Correct. And in actual fact, that appears on page 3 of
Yes.
TS1.
Yes.
It fully sets out there a recommendation that
Yes,
our recommendation is based on option 2.
yes.
So let's
okay.
proceed on the basis of option 2.
Okay, okay. So they haven't changed the rules of the game, but they are proposing that they be changed.
Correct, Chief.
Okay, all right. So their recommendation goes to the two officials you have mentioned, is that right?
Correct, Chair.
Okay, all right.
as recorded on page 8535, which is a memorandum which
Yes.
you'll see it's from Mr. Siabonga Gama
Yes.
on the top there. If you want to see the name of Mr. Gianni, that appears on page 8537 under signature. Is Mr. Gianni and Mr. Gama. Making a further, they are requesting on page 8535, they are requesting Mr. Brian Molefe, who was a GCE at a stage, for him to approve the shortlisted bidders based on scenario 2
Yes.
as proposed by the CFET.
Yes.
In essence, in the body of this document, they summarize what transpired at the CFET and
Yes.
what CFET is saying,
Yes.
and then sort of assuming or adopting the recommendation of CFET and are proposing Mr. Molefe to approve that recommendation.
Yes.
Now, indeed, and
I'm sorry. The recommendation of the CFET did not contemplate re-advertising and starting the process afresh.
not at all, Chair.
It simply contemplated that if those above them approved their views, their recommendation, the short listing, if one can call it that, at stage 1, be dealt with as if the rules had already been changed when the people put in their bids. So in other words, they're saying, apply a rule that wasn't there before.
Correct.
In order for people to get to stage 2.
Correct, Chair.
Okay, all right.
So indeed, as it appears on page 8537,
Okay, so you say, Mr. Siabonga Gama in this
memorandum,
sorry,
is Mr. Gama and Mr. Gianni,
in this memo starting at page 8535,
correct, Chair?
which they addressed to Mr. Brian Molefe, they show that they go along with the recommendation made by the
CFET.
the CFE team, and they ask him to approve this recommendation that the shortlisting or the decision as to who goes to stage 2 be on the basis of the amended rules or rules that didn't exist before.
Correct. And that,
Okay.
Chair, is confirmed in paragraph 9. If you go to paragraph 9
Yes.
of 857, it is recommended that the GCE approves the shortlisting of the 5 tenderers that have met the minimum SD evaluation threshold of 60% as evaluated in option 2. Approves
Yes.
the issue of letters to unsuccessful tenderers due to their bids not meeting the minimum standards.
So if Mr. Brian Molefe goes along with this recommendation from Mr. Gama and Mr. Gianni, he would in effect be saying, here are tenderers that will go to stage 2. They have been selected on the basis of, among others, a rule that wasn't there when you all put your bids. Basically, that's what, yeah.
That's it, sum
Okay.
total of what happened. Chair. And that his approval is evidenced by his signature at the bottom on the 8th of June 2012.
So he approves by signing that memorandum,
Correct, it is approved
yes,
by.
on the 8th of June 2012.
Correct, Chair.
Yes, okay.
Okay. Then what happens after the approval is granted?
Maybe before we deal with that, maybe we should deal with the reasons on which this change in the rules is justified.
Correct.
Billy, so I think for that, perhaps it's best we deal with it from Annexure TS1 itself, because the reasons are advanced in that document.
That's fine, whatever, because we now have a situation where the rules have been changed, the change has been approved. Let's hear what the justification is.
Okay.
Like you said earlier, so two reasons are advanced. One is that the criteria existence is unfair to foreign bidders and those that do not have the B certificate, because they cannot then be evaluated at stage one. Two, an impression is being created in a memorandum that in any event, if you are a startup entity, you will be deemed to, as per the codes of good practice, to be eligible at least for a level 4 contributor. Right? That is the reason that they are advancing in that memorandum. And furthermore, they said in any event, in stage 3, BBE will be assessed. But they forget one point, that this was, the intention time was to use BE as a gatekeeper in stage 1. Now, like the chair has already said earlier on, it is unfair, which was in our analysis in terms of on slide 23, to say it's, as a matter of law, it's unfair to change the rules of procurement during the procurement process. The spirit and purport of Section 217, that we must all be exposed to a competitive, fair, and transparent tender process. The PPM itself.
So where the PPM is?
The PPM is a Transnet Procurement Procedure Manual.
Yes.
It says if there should not be any changes, especially material changes, to an evaluation criteria, should there be any material change to the criteria, like the chair said earlier on, at least all the bidders must be informed of that particular change. So, on that first principle, it's already unfair for anyone to change the criteria at that stage. Secondly, to an extent that they rely on the codes of good practice, that as well is legally flawed. The definition of a startup enterprise in the code says a recently formed is a company or enterprise that is recently formed or incorporated for less than 1 year. At that stage, CSR was not even incorporated in South Africa, right? So they don't qualify as a startup enterprise. So you can't even use the codes as a justification to apply to CSR. Because at that stage, in their own bid, they are saying they will get do a JV once they are a preferred bidder. So at that stage, they are not even falling within the four corners of the codes of good practice, insofar as it prescribes that a newly incorporated entity must be regarded as a startup enterprise which qualifies for level 4. So on those 2 points already, the argument that has been advanced is flawed.
So if I...
So you said there were 2 reasons they advanced.
Yeah.
Why BB
must be waived.
Must be waived or mustn't be a factor at stage 1. They said it was unfair to use them against foreign companies.
Correct.
And was that on the basis that foreign companies might not have that requirement in their own countries of origin?
Correct.
Yes. But isn't the position, wouldn't the position be that, for example, if you are a foreign company like that and you know that there is that requirement, that you can comply by having a local partner? Is that the position or not? I'm asking.
Sure.
Wouldn't you be able to meet that requirement by having a joint venture with company that will bring you BEE
Certainly, Chair.
status.
Correct. As an example, even on that list that you spoke about, there's Bombardier. Bombardier
Yeah.
is not a South African-based company, but at a stage that already had a local presence. So all that CSR said is, it said it will only do that from a JV once it is a preferred bidder. Meaning at this stage
Yeah.
of the evaluation process, they are not as yet complying or having a BBB certificate.
Yes, it is not going to help you to talk about stage 3 because you won't get there. But also, what's wrong if foreign companies that don't have BEE, don't have the BEE elements are excluded? If there are enough local companies that have got BEE status, what's wrong with not having foreign companies?
So, Chair, now that gives context to the earlier slides when you spoke of the special treatment
Yes.
that CSR seems to be enjoying, because the major beneficiary of this waiver is CSR.
Because maybe if it's only foreign companies that can provide what you're talking about, maybe what you are looking for, then maybe the right body within Transnet can look at whether their policies can make provision to say, under the following circumstances, the BEE requirement will be waived. You know, then that's the right body to look at that. But then the other question with regard to this team that's recommended the amendment is who has the right to amend the criteria? Were you able to establish that at the time of investigating? To the extent that anybody may amend, who had the right to amend the criteria?
Chair,
Would it be the board or some other?
in this instance, it could have still been the GCE. The issue of who has the right to amend, I don't think that's where the issue lies. The issue is, if you are going to have a material amendment which affects the level, the playing fields, then the right thing to do is to reissue the tender, to issue an erratum to say, now the rules of the game have now been changed in this fashion. So we didn't pick much of an issue with a right of a particular body or person to change. The question is an assessment of the import of that change and at what stage of the procurement process. If indeed, because this looks noble, assuming this looks noble, the right thing to have occurred is for this tender to be re-advertised so that those who chose not to respond on a basis of this gatekeeper on stage 1 then would have been freely able to participate in the revised bid documents.
Well, somebody would have the power to say the criteria that will be applicable are the following.
Yeah.
Now, either you have a document that sets the criteria in general, and that's the criteria that gets applied all the time, or you may have a body or a person that has the power to determine the criteria in regard to a particular transaction. And I would imagine that where there is somebody who has the power to determine the criteria in relation to a particular tender, that if you seek to change them, you would need to go back to that person, because they shouldn't be changed by anybody who decides, I don't like this part of the criteria, so I'll change it. You know.
Correct.
But but in this case, there was a recommendation that they be amended. That a request was made to
The GCA.
Mr. Brian Molefe. He agreed. He approved.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And if I may, I know it's lunchtime, Chair, just to close on that point.
Yes.
Mr. Molefe not only approves that, he's requested to approve that amendment, he's also requested to approve the results of the evaluation already undertaken in terms of the amended set of criteria.
Correct.
I see it's 1 o'clock, Chair. Might this be an opportune moment?
Thank you. We'll adjourn, take the lunch adjournment. We'll resume at 2. We adjourn.